Okay guys, today I'm going to tell you why Hyperfocus by Chris Bailey is one of my favourite books that I've read this year, and actually could very well go on to be one of my favourite books of all time. So I've read a lot of productivity books, and I'm sure you guys have as well, and I'm not trying to make a book summary with this video. There's plenty of videos and websites out there that do that already. However, I'm just going to tell you the best things I took away from the book. And the other thing I'd like to say is it's very easy to make a summary of a book where you're listening and you write down about 100 points, but as you'll find with a lot of focused on productivity books, the best thing to do is to just take a few lessons and an overall message. So try and keep it like an overall message, and 3 to 4 to 5. So no more. So between 3 to 5 action points, really, no more than that. Otherwise, you'll have too much to do, and you might not actually get the main benefit from the books. Okay, so this is what I'm going to tell you about Hyperfocus. So overall, I really like this book because it showed balance. So I'm sure you've read or heard about plenty of productivity books or productivity YouTube videos by self-help channels, and they all tend to go down a very different route. But I've typically seen lots of, I'm not going to say toxic productivity, but I've seen lots of productivity gurus. They all talk about how like they chain their laptops up and throw it in like a lake, and it's got like a password that's encrypted that they don't know, and like their neighbor knows. And it's really important to understand your addictions and, you know, keep productive. I understand that, but the lengths that some of these people go through, it's very difficult for an average person or somebody who's starting out on their journey to try and implement these things, because they do feel like very extreme measures. Okay, especially when you look at really top CEOs, they have like private retreats that they go and retreat to and spend time thinking, making decisions. The principle is really good. You should withdraw away from people and make good decisions, but it's very hard to implement that if you don't have a private retreat. So like I said, I really like this book because it brings the topic of balance to the forefront of the equation. So it does talk about hyperfocus and scatterfocus, which I'm going to go through in a minute, which are the key things I've taken away from the book. But I really like the way the author balanced, and he was talking about how you actually need both of these things in life. So I'm going to quickly define what he meant by hyperfocus. So he was saying that's a period of intense focus and attention on specific goals, and it can be for a prolonged or short period of time, okay, but it's for a fixed duration of time, and it's on a very few subset of things. So for example, if you're writing a book, you know exactly what the chapter is going to be on, you're going to focus on that, and you're going to go in and you're going to do that. Okay, he then talks about scatterfocus. Okay, and this is where instead of deliberately focusing your mind on a few set of things, you actually let it wander and do what it wants, okay? And you can just, like I said, it can be running in the background while you're doing some other routine habits, okay? And he talks about how hyperfocus tends to be deliberate, but scatterfocus tends to be things that you do in your routine or habits that are automated, like when you're walking, when you're cleaning, when you're doing the dishes, when you're listening to music, etc. And I think there's a really good balance between the two that he talks about, because initially, from watching a lot of, like I said, videos about self-help and productivity, you might assume the more productive you are and the more productive and hyper-focused you are in all of your tasks, the better you'll do. But the author, Chris Bailey, very quickly illustrates that actually that's not the case. So there are some tasks that you only do well because you do them in scatter focus mode, i.e. you do them automated and you don't pay attention to them. So when you're walking to the shop to pick up your groceries, if you paid direct, hyper-focused, deliberate attention to each one of your steps, the way each of your muscles moves as you're walking, and somebody told you to try and walk as normally as possible, and you really focus on that, you would inherently end up walking how you don't normally walk. And there's plenty of examples of that as well, and it kind of overlaps with paradoxical intention, which Viktor Frankl mentions in his work as well. I'm a big fan of his work, so I had to mention him. But like I said, so I really like that because he really illustrated very early on that there is a need for balance, and hyper-focusing on everything isn't really going to lead to a better outcome in all cases. So that's something that you have to consider as well. So then he goes on to talk about how a balance between hyper-focus for productivity, so when you know exactly specifically what you need to do, so like I said, writing a book chapter, creating a business, marketing something specific, a fitness goal, etc. So you know exactly what you need to do. Hyper-focusing on that is a really good thing to do. However long you spend on that is up to you, okay? So that's a really good thing to do. Plenty of productivity books tell you that already. But like I said, he talks about scatter focus as well and letting your mind wander. And he talks about how this works wonders for creativity, and how a lot of people actually, they can become more creative when they've had better rest, when they're more relaxed, and when they're like I said, not focusing attentively and they're letting their mind wander, you can come up with more creative solutions, okay? So that's something that you probably may have known before the book, but like I said, he just really explained it really nicely, really well, and I really like that. And the other thing he said is he talked about actually maximizing both of these things in your day. So actually finding out the periods where you tend to be more creative, or when your mind tends to wander naturally. So when you feel a bit more tired, when you feel a bit more, your mind is starting to leave the productivity of the day, when you're starting to feel a bit dozy at work, maybe in the morning, maybe in the night, actually maximizing that time as scatterfocus and scheduling habits that can be automated to that time so that you can take care of them, but also so that you can let your mind wander and create better ideas so that you can then use them in the periods where you naturally tend to focus a bit more. So your hyper-focused modes, where you can then use your creative ideas and channel them in a productive manner. So I really like the way he tied them both together. He suggested that. So like I said, overall, a really great book, and I definitely recommend you read it. And if you want to find out more benefits that I gained and just some quick notes that I took as well, check out my website. I'll put a link in the description for what I learned, and any books that I read, I like to make a summary, or just not even a summary, like I said, just my overall impression of the book, moments that stuck with me, and then a couple of action points that I think are really useful or that I'm personally going to be focusing on. Like I said, I tend to get a lot better benefit from the book when I pick a few things to focus on, rather than trying to take everything on board. But like I said, I do make a note on what sticks with me, because then when I've worked on those 3 to 5 things, then I can actually choose another 3 to 5 things from that book or a different book. So like I said, guys, if you want to follow along for the benefits that I gain from reading, if you don't have the time to necessarily read all these books, or maybe you've read them before and you've forgotten what they're about and you just want a refresher, take a look in the description, have a look at the blog in my website. I go through all of these regularly. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Take care, peace out, follow for more amazing content, master your feelings, master yourself.